Hi, everyone. I think we can all agree that when you're just starting a career, there are a lot of unknowns, but not to worry. As part of PTEN and Motor Age's Best Young Tech Awards program, I'm speaking with some industry experts on what young techs need to know going into the auto industry. We'll cover tips on what you should be looking for when applying to shops, how you can find training to continue learning and advancing your career, and what tools and equipment you need to get started, and so much more. I'm Emily Markham, the editor of PTEN, and with me today are Pete Meyer, Creative Director for the Vehicle Repair Group with Endeavor Business Media, Mike Crescendo, Chief Marketing and Strategy Officer for TechForce Foundation, Luke Murray, Manager of Customer Training for Advanced Professional, and Randy Briggs, Research and Development Center Manager for CarQuest Technical Institute. Thank you all so much for joining me.
Pleasure.
Now, before we get started, I just want to mention that if you are a technician under the age of 35 who is doing just an amazing job, or you know a young technician who is, I strongly encourage you to nominate them or yourself for our Best Young Tech Award program. This is brought to you by PTEN and Motor Age magazines. Nominations are open right now. The deadline is June 2nd, and you can find that link in the description below or by visiting vehicleservicepros.com/2023 Best Young Tech. Okay, let's get started. So Luke, can you tell me, what should a new technician be looking for in the shops they're applying to?
Culture and environment is key. I mean, we're all aware of the shortage of technicians, which means that there's an abundance of job opportunities for young techs going into this industry. And don't sell yourself short just because a shop is conveniently located, within driving distance. But really focus on the culture and the environment of that shop. It's where you're going to be spending most of your time, and you want to make sure that it's a place that you enjoy being. So if that's effective lighting and climate control, air conditioning, break rooms, things of that nature. And then also the employees. I mean, that work there. When you're going in for an interview, don't be afraid to ask the boss, the shop owner, if you can talk to the other employees and get a feel for how they are and their personalities and their feelings. If a shop owner doesn't want you to talk to the people that work there, that should be a red flag, in my opinion.
For sure. And Randy, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I do. I think, I agree with everything that Luke said. Of course, culture is just key. If you have an opportunity to go into that shop pre-interview and walk into the back, just look around. Are the technicians looking at you and smiling, or looking at you like you're a bother? But I guess the one thing I would add to Luke's comments is that walk into the waiting room and look around and ask yourself this question. Would your mom feel comfortable bringing her car to this business? And if she would, that's a good start.
Mm-hmm.
Mike?
Boy, I got a whole list for you. Obviously, I think culture's king. Happy techs, happy customers, environment, clean shop, modern equipment. Is it a place you want to come to work every day? You mentioned, does it if it's in the Southwest, does it have air conditioning? if it's in the Northeast, does it have heat? But other things we're seeing shops using to attract people, obviously benefits. Some shops have them, some don't. So people are shopping for it. They can afford to be choosy. Will they reimburse for tools? Could it be part of a signing bonus? We're seeing some shops set up new techs with entire tool sets. Is it diverse? Does both their customers and the stuff they see in and around the shop? And when I say diverse, I don't mean just ethnicity, but does it appear to be female friendly? Women are one of the ways we could potentially help solve the tech shortage. But if the shop doesn't look like it's female friendly, only a men's room, that type of stuff, that's something to look out for. Mentorships, that's game changing for a young person to be able to connect with a mentor in the shop. So if they don't mention it, find out if that's something they can offer to you. We're also hearing, particularly from our Gen Z young techs and students, are they're looking for a pathway, let them know that, yeah, maybe you do have to start sweeping the floors and on the lube rack, but give me a sense for, what's the pathway? How long can I expect to do that? What do I need to do to demonstrate competency? What directions can I grow in the organization? Um, but tuition reimbursement, we've seen shops who, they've already got their school loans or whatever, but hey, if you'll join our shop for every 6 months or year that you'll stay with us, we'll help pay down that student loan. Those are just some of the things we're seeing used in the marketplace to attract folks. So our young techs should know they're out there and look for them.
Yeah, for sure. Those are a lot of good points.
Did I mention
Pete?
training? That's huge. Obviously, training. They want training.
Hmm. Pete, anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's just a few things. First, a lot of the young technicians are leaving public school programs, and most of these programs have what's called an industry advisory council, where local shops, dealerships help support that program. So if I was a graduate, I would be looking at those first, but they've already indicated an involvement in making things better in the industry. And we've heard culture mentioned quite a few times. I would just clarify that every business has some kind of culture, some negative, some positive. So when you're looking at these potential employers, um, look for those who are building a culture of growth and development of their people, and they treat you as a partner in their business or an important part of that business, and not just another gear in the machine. There's a lot of old school shop owners still out there that think that they can, have you start off emptying trash cans and cleaning bathrooms, but you've invested a lot in your education. And that's okay if that's where you start off to kind of prove yourself, so to speak. But that shouldn't be an end all in your career path, as Mike mentioned earlier. And their shop owners today, there are many who have embraced the need for continuing education, for continued growth of their staff. I've seen shop owners shut their whole place down to attend training events like those hosted by Advanced Professional, WorldPAC, and CTI. That's the kind of guys that you want to work for. And of course, benefits. That's all too important. And with the shortage of the technicians, you are absolutely in a good bargaining position. You are absolutely as able to interview a potential employer as they are able to interview you. Don't forget that.
That's a really good point. I think that's something that people often forget when they start interviewing for a position, is that it works both ways. All right. So what should new techs, look into in terms of specializing for, specific repair categories? Or is it better to stay more generalized when they're just getting started? Luke?
I mean, that's a great question. I don't know that there's a canned answer, but it's largely going to be based on your personal interest. If you're interested in something specialty, then I think you should focus your career on it. But if you haven't figured that out yet, you can always start off general repair, and maybe you discover something that excites you and interests you, and you can always shift your career. Just because you sign on with a shop doesn't mean you have to stay there. So if you're not sure where you want to go, find a really good, great reputation general repair shop that'll give you an opportunity to explore multiple specialties, whether it's brands, or specific repair. And then maybe you discover that you like something, you like a particular brand of vehicle, then transition to a shop that specializes in that brand. Or maybe you discover you like a particular aspect of the automotive repair, engine rebuilding or fabrication, customization, hot rod, whatever that might be. And you discover, wow, I didn't think that at the beginning of this career, I would be really excited about custom upholstery. And now after doing a couple of odd jobs, you learn that, wow, that was exciting and therapeutic. And now you go search for a shop that specializes in that. So, maybe you already know that. Maybe you learned that growing up. You were into hot rods, or you discovered that in school. And if you know that already, then great, start your career that way. But if not, it's never too late to learn that. that happens to a lot of people in school. They start general education and then they discover taking an elective that they have a passion for something and they focus their education on that. Same thing can happen in your career. So you don't have to make that decision now, but when you discover that you enjoy something specialty or specific, then I think you should pursue that.
For sure, for sure. Randy?
Well, that's a tough question. A lot of it, the question to specialize or not to specialize, a lot of that depends on the shop, of course, but the market that's supporting that shop. So if you're really considering, jumping right into a specialty area, take a very close look at the market so you understand it, or find somebody who can help you analyze that data. Absolutely nothing wrong with starting out in a specialty shop. I started out in an import shop, and when I owned my shop, we were a generalist to the point that we would work on irrigation engines and BMWs in the same day. And so we really had a wide span. No matter what path that student decides to take, it's crucially important to get grounded in the foundations of drivability if you're going in that direction, electricity if you're going in that direction, or all of the above. And in today's world, a lot of it is all of the above. Let me give you an example of what I mean by being grounded in foundations. I was just recently at a shop, and this is a first class shop. It is over the top. Technicians are highly trained. They work on higher end vehicles. The shop is spotless. They've been in business for 40 years. Every technician had a laptop on a cart right by the car he was working on. So this place was set up, and they have a stellar reputation. They were working on a Volkswagen that came from a dealership, and they had it in their bay for 3 months. And let's just say it had a lot of parts thrown at it in an effort to solve the problem. And the problem was it wouldn't accelerate. No response to the pedal at all. The problem ended up being it was in a default state. And the reason it was in a default state is that there was an obstruction right at the turbo inlet. It looks like either an air filter failed or somebody didn't service it very well, and it plugged the inlet of the turbo. If the technician understood the meaning of an absolute load PID and the global side of the scan tool and took a test drive, he would have been directed in that area almost immediately. And I'm talking about the dealership and the shop. That's a very foundational thing. But due to the fact that so many of our cars today are highly technical, it's human nature to dive into the highly technical problem, when in many cases it's not. It's just something basic, something foundational.
Yeah. Mike?
If I can go back to the first question, there was something important I forgot to share with our viewers. Just because a particular brand, a quick story. So I knew a female tech, passionate about being a tech, invested in a for-profit school, got some decent loan overhead, went to work for a dealership, had a nightmare. It was a reputable national OE, but they basically told her, you're a woman and you'll never do anything but work on the lube rack. And she was heartbroken. She was ready to throw in the towel entirely on being a tech, even though she loved it. She just had a terrible experience. And had she written off that brand, she would have been, it would have been a sad ending of the story. Good news is another shop in that community of the same brand hired her. She became their star tech. She loves it. They paid off her student loans. So I just want our viewers to understand that it comes down to shop leadership and ownership and stuff, not just the brand. What I don't want to name brands, but there's plenty of big brands out there and they've got good and bad. So look a little beyond just that label on the door. In terms of specializing, I agree, follow your passion. If you're into something, go with that. You're going to be rewarded for it. I can tell you, and chatting with dealerships and shops around the country, a couple of specializations or extra skills or ASE certifications that might give you a leg up above your competitors for the spot, although you can almost write your ticket these days, is EV. ICE isn't going away. I'm not saying that, but there are more and more EVs coming into shops, and there's just not that many people trained on how to deal with them. So that's one thing. And then ADAS, some shops are outsourcing it, but if you can come to the table with some skills and working knowledge around that, in both cases, we have seen, actually reading the applications for the Best Young Tech Award and seeing how sometimes they become the subject matter expert in their shop, even though they don't have the years of experience. They're coming to the table as digital natives, and as long as they remain humble and helpful, the old guys with the gray hair going, "Hey, how do we do this?" And so you can learn from each other. So
Yeah, no, that's always great. So Pete, anything to add?
Oh, you know me, of course. I always have something to add. I'm going to say that right now, for the technicians entering the field at this point in time, young, middle-aged, whatever their status might be, male, female, it doesn't matter. You're entering the field in probably what's one of the most exciting times in the history of our industry. I mean, we are looking at an entire paradigm shift from ICE to EV, hydrogen fuel cell powered vehicles. I just saw where a major Class 8 truck manufacturer is going to be producing hydrogen fuel cell vehicles for sale to their customer base. This is an exciting time, and I don't know if I would call it specialization, because we're not the only transport sector going towards electric. I mean, if maritime, aircraft, the big heavy duty Class 8s, mining equipment. Right now, somewhere in South Dakota, there's a combine plowing the back 40 autonomously, running on electric power, and it's doing it's just doing it perfectly, all on its own. That electric drive powertrain has a lot of opportunity in the future coming for them. And like Mike said, the internal combustion engine isn't going anywhere anytime soon. But what I tell techs now is that if you're kind of over 40 plus, the EVs probably aren't going to affect you as much. But if you're a young person, late teens, early 20s, just entering this industry, that in my mind is entirely your future, or a big part of it. And right now is the time to get that quality education, and there aren't that many sources in my mind for that kind of education. But if you can get that quality education now, you are really going to be light years above your competition.
Yeah. I just attended the ETI Tool Tech conference, and one of the speakers was actually saying how in the next 10 years, we're going to see more change in the automotive industry than we have in the last 100. So
oh, well,
there's
I
definitely...
got to jump on that one, because it was actually Mary Barra, the CEO of General Motors, who said that.
okay.
That. She said that we're going to change more in the next 5 years than we have in the last 50. But she said that over 5 years ago. And I think everyone on this panel can attest to the fact that she was absolutely right. I mean, we've seen so many technological advances and many more to come. That's why I'm saying that, now I'm kind of fortunate, because I got to be in the industry when we were still running on carburetors and points ignition systems, to GDI and the beginning of autonomous vehicles and hybrids and electric vehicles. So I've kind of really seen a big, tremendous change, and have a chance to be a part of all of that. And now it's almost kind of like the Wild West days when it comes to EV. Yeah, the powertrains are kind of similar, but all the rest of the way that these manufacturers can put their vehicles together, there's no rule book for them. They're all coming up with things on their own. We're seeing companies come out of, I got to drive a Polaris the other day. Who would even know a year ago who Polaris even was? But you're seeing that kind of thing now. New companies coming up in that field that we've never heard of. The big OEMs are going to have competition in the arena. So it's the wild west days when it comes to the EV, as far as I think.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of change happening right now. It's exciting.
Well, Pete, I've noticed too that the different EV manufacturers do it differently. Just because one form of EV. You know, how Tesla does it is very different than how Ford does it, than how GM does it. You know, granted, there's foundational principles that are consistent, but when you tear it apart and see how they put stuff together, there's some different approaches.
Well, that's true now, even with ICE, Mike, right? I mean, BMW does things differently than Chevrolet does, and that's always been that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but the foundational principles, a motor generator is a motor generator, an inverter is an inverter. It might be packaged differently, it might be put in a different part of the vehicle. They may have one motor, they might have two motors, they might have a motor in every single wheel. But how it all has to work together, just like with a good diagnostic technician, if you and to look what Randy said, you've got to have that solid foundation, number one. And then if you have that solid foundation, technicians, the top technicians in the industry have something very unique in common, and that is their ability to apply creative thinking to new situations, to take in information, to be able to digest that information, take their experience and apply it to something they've never faced before and come out successfully at the end. And that makes us as an industry unique. I mean, how many technicians do you know that call a plumber or call someone to work on their mower? We fix our own stuff. We don't need them. You know, that's just who we are.
That's what makes it fun. I mean, that's the fun part of this career. I mean, you get to solve cool, complex challenges, and sometimes that other people can't figure out.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And, you know, to a young technician who is considering this as a career, that's great if you're considering it as a career. If you think about cars day and night and you're fascinated with technology, you have the personality for this industry. If you're looking for a job, maybe you ought to look down the street.
Yeah. Agree, Randy. And I think something else I'd like to make sure we share with everyone who watches this, you know, a lot of folks are hesitant to even take a look at our industry because of some old concepts, you know, of what we are and who we are. You know, the day of the grease monkey has been gone for 2 decades at least. You know, if you're thinking about being a technician and think it's going to be all hard lifting, greasy stuff, maybe once in a while, but today's the game is for the thinking man or woman, someone who has that creative thinking talent, who has that electrical computer background. These things are rolling networks. There's more computers on a modern automobile than most businesses have in their office complexes. So, and it's all growing. You know, the EVs, the autonomy, that's not going to go away. That's coming, and it's going to take people, you know, young people coming in the industry who just are. Hey, if you were that toddler that knew how to do the iPad before your grandpa did,
Yeah,
you need to be in this industry because that's the kind of talent we need.
Yeah, no, that's so true. It's so much more technical now than it used to be. But and to kind of rein us back into our previous question.
Sorry.
So no. If they were to choose to specialize, is there a best way to go about doing this?
I mean, I suppose you got to figure out what you're specializing in, and then you research to find the shops that are most well known for that particular specialty, and those are the shops you want to try and work in.
Okay.
But I think the hard part is figuring out what you want to actually specialize in, and then also learning that this industry, service and repair, you know, even if we, you know, break it down to the smallest section, just, you know, light auto service and repair industry, there's so many more specialties that people are unaware of, even within that little small section of the industry. So, you know, if you know what it is you want to specialize in, great, and do more research, find out the shops that specialize in it, or the regions. You know, if you know you want to specialize in Porsche repair, you probably don't want to, you know, move to Alaska and find a job up there, because that's there's not going to be many up there. You know, so you'd be better off in Florida or Southern California, looking for that. So, you know, it's a lot of research for sure. In, you know, once you know what your specialty is, and then finding out, you know, what types of shops is that, and what regions are best for that particular specialty.
Randy?
Okay. Well, how many times have we seen a young person come out of tech school and go into a shop with a vision in their mind of what they're going to do? And they get there and they're disillusioned because now they find out what they're really going to do. And the same thing holds true for a specialty shop, of course. So my advice would be to find a mentor or mentors, people you can sit down and get the real story from. And if you approach a technician or a shop owner with a curious mind and have those questions that need to be answered, 9 times out of 10, you'll get somebody that'll take you under their wing and help you out. And so that would be my advice. Find a mentor.
Some of those mentors might even step up and help pay for education and give you a job. Yeah. For me, I'll take it before the shop, and it's if you're still in your educational journey and or looking for a place to find some extra skills and certifications. I can only come from it from the perspective of TechForce Foundation. We have an online community of over 20,000 young, and or aspiring technicians in this community. We've got over 600 schools in there. So if you're looking for that specialized training, you can query and look around. And quite frankly, it might require you to move from Florida to Phoenix or something to take that training. But, that we're the largest grantor of scholarships, and it's more than just tuition. We help with relocation and cost of education, that kind of stuff. So don't let the cost intimidate you. If you want to go to some specialized training somewhere, the industry's dying to have you. And so there are resources. If you look hard enough, certainly check us out, but there's plenty of places that'll help underwrite that training, because they know when you come out of it, you're going to be a much more valuable employee. And plus, certain shops and OEs have advanced training programs and stuff that you can plug into as well.
When it comes to specialized, like I said, we kind of covered that quite a bit, but the only thing I would kind of interject there too is that when you're fresh out of school, I don't think you really have any clue what you want to specialize in. You might think that one manufacturer is maybe a little cooler than another. And then you start working on them and you find out, well, maybe they're not as cool as I thought they were. So it's like, that comes to play as well. Like Randy said, find a mentor. If you do your homework, you find the good shop to start in. That's half the battle right there. And then I'm going to stress every opportunity you have to go to a training event, whether it's local, regional, national. These are where you're going to meet the individuals in the industry who are at the top of their games, who have been there, done that, and got the t-shirts. And the ability to, and everyone I've ever been to, every man and woman in attendance would be more than willing to sit down with you over a beer or a cocktail after classes were over for the day and talk to you about anything they can do or anything you might want to ask about furthering your career. Because they've all been there, they've all faced those hurdles, especially the young ladies who are showing an interest in our industry. Come to these events, because man and woman, more than happy to sit down with you and encourage you on your career path. There are people who are in your corner.
Mm-hmm.
So that actually is a great segue into our next question, which is, how can these new techs find the training to attend to, help progress their knowledge and move forward in their careers?
There's resources online. There's, websites like Industry Attends that do their best job on listing events and training that are coming up. It's, joining forums and social media groups that promote and advertise these trainings. But finding training is only part of the battle. You also want to make sure that you're being employed by someone that supports it and will send you to training. The last thing you want to be doing is saying, I'm committed to training, and then, spending all your hard-earned dollars sending yourself to training. So that's key. When going to shops, as was mentioned during the first question, you're doing the interview just as much as the potential employer is. So don't be afraid to ask those questions, and also look around, look on the walls in that waiting room. A shop that truly stands behind training will typically have certificates of training hanging on the walls from other technicians that have been to it. You want to see walls that are covered in it. And then look closely at the dates, because it's easy to put some wallpaper up there, but then when you look at the dates, you realize, oh wow, it's like once per year. You know, you want to see several opportunities that show that this company, this shop is committed to training and is committed to sending their technicians to training. When you see that, again, ask, okay, but is it just your lead techs, the guys that have been here for 10 years, that you feel like it's worth the investment in? There's still a lot of shop owners, unfortunately, that are nervous to invest in a young tech out of fear that they're going to leave after they get that training. So, you know, which again boils down to culture and things of that nature. So, you know, finding available training is one thing, but making sure that you're working somewhere that's committed to actually sending you to training and recognizes the investment in your education is huge.
I would have to say that since COVID, one of the things that we have available to us now that we didn't before was really quality virtual training events. You'll notice I didn't say webinar, excuse me. Whether it's a lunch and learn, whether it's an evening or daytime event, you don't have to look far to find some really quality virtual training. To that end, join some Facebook groups. There's some professional Facebook groups out there, professional technician Facebook groups that can really show you the rest of the automotive world, and not make you feel so isolated in that shop. So you need to start exploring that. And then Luke is absolutely right. You want to work for somebody who will support that training and not only allow you to go to training, but encourage you to go to training. As old adage in the industry says, the worst thing you can do is, or what's worse, do you train a guy and have him leave, or do you not train him and have him stay? So I would say not train him and have him stay would be the worst case scenario. But that's been true for years. You have to invest as a business owner. You have to invest in your technicians. As a technician, you have to invest in yourself to be committed to that training that your employer is providing.
For sure, for sure. I mean, I don't know any career that someone could have where, you know, you're not constantly needing to learn and stay up to date about what's going on. I can only imagine starting a job somewhere and having your boss or your manager not care about that. It's just so important.
And I rattled off some potential sources on the prior question, but something that just dawned on me too, that online community that TechForce has, we actually have training content donated by Ants, WDI, CarQuest. Industry donates it. It's often stuff you have to pay for on the market, but because industry wants to see this community succeed, they donate it. Now, I'm not talking about a multi-hour course to get you ASE certified. I'm talking supplemental, things, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. But I was talking to some senior techs about, hey, you guys aren't going to learn anything in here because you know all this stuff. And they're like, well, actually, Mike, I was doing it for the points, but I actually learned some stuff. So even though it's short form and concise, there's still things that can be learned in there. So as a starting point, like I only know the old spark plug ignition systems, and I went in there and queried and found out, how it's evolved and what it is today, because I'm still working on my old Mustang that just has the old school stuff, and so even little stuff like that.
To share an expression of an old friend of mine, a good friend of mine: if you don't educate, you'll evaporate. You have to continue your education, especially in this industry. And I think Randy, Luke, both attest to the fact that we meet technicians almost routinely who have been in the business for a few years, think they know everything there is to know. But today, even something as minor as changing a battery requires a whole new process of how you do things. If you don't do the things the way they're supposed to be done, then you end up causing more problems than you had before you got there. And one of the things that I like to share with the people that I meet is the technology that they face today in their bays is the most advanced, most complex that the OEMs have ever produced. And the days of being able to fix it close enough are gone and have been gone for a long, long time. You either fixed the vehicle right or you fixed it wrong. There's no gray area anymore. And so if you are serious about being in this field, whether you're already an established technician or you just open your toolbox on day one, you have to be always educating yourself, always staying up with the current processes, and you have to read the friggin' information before you start cranking on something in the bay. You have to stay up to speed. And it goes back to what we said earlier too, about finding a good shop to begin with, one that has that culture of growth and training. That's the one you want to find to start with. If you don't, well, don't wait for that one to come along. Keep searching. But there are so many resources out there today, as Randy pointed out, with the COVID and the lockdowns and the internet's growth. There are so many good online resources available to people. I'm not going to say you can go out and become a YouTube certified master technician. I will caution people to watch what they view there. There are some channels with a lot of people subscribing that are just teaching, well, let's just say they're not as accurate as they could or should be. So you have to kind of vet your sources. But yeah, and again, little regional events are occurring all the time. And of course, the national events gosh, if you write anything down, vision is certainly one you have to go to. If your shop qualifies to go to World Pack, the Advanced Professional SDX, that's something you absolutely never want to miss if that's in your wheelhouse or your ability to attend. And they're just a few examples. So it's not like it used to be when I was coming up. You know, training resources are not difficult to find, but it all starts with going to that finding that shop that will support it and having that attitude that your graduation from your technical school is just the first day of the rest of your life in educating in this industry.
Yeah.
If I can dovetail into that just for a second, I saw a little snippet last week that really rang true for me. It said training is critical tomorrow, and that is an attitude that technicians and shop owners and our industry as a whole has to change. Training has to be at the forefront, or we're not going to survive changes in technology. And not only changes in technology, but providing the means for that technician to bridge the gap in their foundational skills between what they're doing today and what they're going to be doing in the very near future.
Right, right. Training is just so important, so key to this sort of profession. Now, another important aspect is, having the right tools and equipment to get the job done. So how would you say that new techs, what do they need when they're just starting out so they're not breaking the bank trying to fill their toolbox?
Bare minimum. I think, unfortunately, far too many techs going into this industry spend way too much money on tools on the get-go, and it's a lesson everybody learns the hard way. The other thing too is that whole concept is changing recently. A lot more shops are moving towards supplying tools for technicians and not making it a requirement, for a few reasons. One, it's attractive when looking for techs to say, hey, we got all the tools for you. And there's also financial reasons. I know in California, for example, an employer has to pay twice minimum wage if they require tools being supplied. So there's a lot of shop owners that are saying, if we supply the tools, we don't have to pay the employees as much. So there's multiple reasons why shops are moving towards supplying tools and not requiring tools, but it's not the norm yet. It's moving towards it. But if you have to have tools, start small. Bare minimum. Don't break the bank going for name brands like Snap-on and Mac and Matco. Those are great tools, and you will probably end up investing into those tools as your career goes on. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with getting a Husky set from Home Depot or a Shameless Plug, a Die Hard tool set from Advanced Auto Parts, but Craftsman, and then you use those tools. They're still tools. They work. Will they hold up as long? No, they won't. But you replace them as they break. I remember when I started as a technician, my mentor bought me a very basic Craftsman tool set that I had, and I was very eager to, get a big toolbox that had a name on it. Just I felt like I had accomplished something, but I was paying off the tool guy for years. And there's a reason why I was still living in my parents' house, long into my 20s, because I was paying the tool guy more than I was paying my parents in rent. And that's not right. We shouldn't need to do that. So as your ratchets break, then replace it with a high quality ratchet. You'll learn that your combination wrenches, yeah, they don't really break that often. I still have the original Craftsman wrenches. I brought them home, and they're still in my home toolbox. And now that I'm not wrenching and I'm not working on cars, I've got tens of thousands of dollars of sockets and ratchets in my home garage. And I look at a lot of them and say, I probably never needed to invest this money in those tools. Definitely buy lots and lots of 10 millimeter sockets, but as far as the rest of it is concerned, I start very small and don't go for the name brands. You'll buy them as a reward as you move on in your career. Wait 10 years before you buy an expensive toolbox. A general toolbox from Harbor Freight, it'll last years, and it gets the job done. And then if you decide that this is the career you're in, and you're making some money, and you decide you want to reward yourself with something high quality, then go for it. It's just like buying a car. High school kids are not going out there buying Ford Raptors. Well, not all of them. You start small with a fixer upper, and then you reward yourself as you move on in your career. But it's unfortunate. I see it so often, and even with school discounts, you can get 50% off a toolbox. That's still a lot of money, and it still might not be worth it for you. So don't succumb to the peer pressure of having the fancy tools. It's simply not necessary. And then most specialty tools, the shop should be buying that for the shop as well. You should only need your personal hand tools.
Well, I agree with everything you said, Luke. I'm kind of chagrined that you mentioned Harbor Freight, because I just bought a General toolbox.
Yeah.
If there's one piece of advice I could give you, it would be stay off the payment plans. If you find yourself in a position where you've got to go out and you've got to buy those quality tools for a specific job, and they come off of a tool truck, have no problem with that. Go to your credit union, go to your bank, get a loan, stay off the payment plans. That's the best advice I can give you. And when you start out with that basic set that has a not big name brand on the toolbox, that's a good thing, because eventually you're going to rotate those tools to your house to work on your own vehicles at home. And, so build that collection gradually and as needed. So.
I couldn't agree more with everything that's been said. I will tell you a cool resource I've watched, and it's a guy who's worked with all our brands, The Humble Mechanic. He's done 2 videos over the last 2 years. Unfortunately, everything went up. A year ago, it cost him $1,500. This year, he did it for $2,500, basically the same tools. But he literally has a video of a starter tool set, and he's 20 years in the business. All the stuff we've just talked about, he's been there, but he worked with a local dealership who wanted to set up their techs with a starter set without breaking the bank. And it's a great way. I mean, there's so many different tools in there, but he was able to pull it off for between $1,500 and $2,500, shopping at Harbor Freight and Lowe's and watching the sales, all that kind of stuff. But it's a great primer for the kind of essential tools you need that aren't going to break the bank, because we all want I won't name the brands, but some of those really cool shiny tools that but it takes a while to be able to afford them.
I think the only thing I had that hasn't come up yet is I wouldn't recommend a young tech to invest in a decent global OBD2 only scan tool. There's a number of them on the market. And the reason I say that is that, having, worked in the shop for 35 years, the shop supplied, 1 or 2 scan tools, but they were always in use. And sometimes they got busted up because if it wasn't theirs, they didn't care how it got treated. So I always had my own so that I could handle 90% of the time. The complaint was related to the check engine light, and 90% of the time I can fix it with just global OBD2 data. I don't need Ford specific, Chevy specific, VW specific to do those kind of repairs. And then you're not waiting. You know, you have your own. But that would be the only thing that I would add to what everyone else has said.
There's a lot of good Android apps out there too that are very, very inexpensive and work with an aftermarket wireless pass-through device. And it's a great solution. Takes up no room, very little investment, does everything that the name brand tools will do on the global side.
And then one last thing is, don't be afraid to buy used. There's a lot of technicians leaving the industry that are selling full toolboxes with all the tools in them all over Craigslist. So, you know, take a peek.
Yeah.
That's great. Great point, Luke.
Actually just interviewed a woman for one of our big time box articles in PTEN, and she was saying how her father retired as a technician, and so her Christmas present from him was his toolbox full of all his tools. So
lucky her.
Talk about the best present you can get as a technician. So in terms of finding a mentor, what would you say makes a good mentor?
Wow, that's tough. And unfortunately, it's you usually don't discover it, and you know, until it's too late. But qualities of a good mentor, patience is huge. You know, patience and understanding it goes so far. I've seen fantastic mentors that lose their patience too quick, and you know, they're not willing to stand back, allow you to make a mistake, and then, you know, offer positive criticism on how to play back. So how do you determine that early on, you know, besides asking someone, are you a patient person, and hoping their answer is accurate? Maybe finding out what else they do. You know, have they mentored other people in the past? Are they involved with other youth activities? You know, so things that will have shown that they are patient. Are they a little league coach? Oh, you know, they're going to be a great mentor then. Youth pastors, Cub Scout leaders, you know, these are all places that in order to thrive and enjoy, you have to have the abilities and skills to be a mentor. So if you can find someone that does those types of extracurricular activities in the community, serves on ROP committees for the school board, things of that nature that show they already have a lot of those qualities. And then they also happen to be a technician that wants to take on a mentee or an apprentice. You know, they have those skills already embedded. Otherwise, they wouldn't have thrived in those other activities. But you know, that's a tough one to know, other than they've been mentors to other people in the past, and you've been referred to them by people that have gone through some type of mentorship program. Look at what else they do in the community, you know, to give you an idea if they have some of that necessary skill set.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it, is looking beyond what they do in the shop to see how they might fare as a mentor.
I think the only thing that I'd add to that is that you don't need to have the lead tech in the shop be your mentor. You need to have somebody who's technically proficient and knows a little more than you do, or has a little more experience than you do. But the most important trait is that he's got a passion for helping people. And if you can find that combination, you've got a mentor.
Yeah.
Well, Luke mentioned something that I want to punctuate. Letting the mentee make mistakes. Now, there's a range for that. You don't want to, cost the shop $1,000 because they plugged the thing in wrong. But it, as a mentor, you're kind of like inclined to go, oh, do it this way or do it that way. But we learn from our mistakes. It could be just the proper way to hold the tool. Well, let them do it the wrong way for a while and say, hey, try it this way. And then, as opposed to just do it this way, do it this way, do it this way. There's a balance in there, and it only comes with time. And I'm not the greatest at doing it, because when you see them doing that wrong thing, you want to stop them. But I think knowing when it's when it's a wrong thing that isn't going to cause irreparable damage or expenses, to let them learn from that lesson.
If you're going to find someone in the shop, typically in the beginning, you're probably going to be assigned some type of supervisor, whether it's a shop foreman, the business owner themselves, lead tech, whatever the case might be. But from learning from someone, I think, and this can be a really challenge to someone new, but that person needs to know what they're talking about. They have to have their own training up to speed and their own knowledge up to speed. I see way too often where older techs are sharing things the way they always did them. But as I mentioned earlier, there are so many even routine processes that you can't do that way anymore. So that individual has to be up to speed on his own. And second, I would venture to say that yeah, it'd be nice to have someone in the shop, but with today, with the internet communities that Randy alluded to, you can have mentors virtually. There's a lot of good men and women who are helping others in the field. I mean, heck, that's one of the things that attracted me to our own technical editor, Brandon Steckler, early on, was his passion for helping other technicians and his willingness to go the extra mile to do so. And he's not the only one in that arena. Many of them are working for and under the guise of Luke and Randy as part of their training programs. So there's a lot of good men and women who are out there that could act as virtual mentors as well. And with that, I have to say goodbye. I have another meeting to attend to. It was a blast, and it was great hanging out with all you guys.
Thank you so much for joining us, Pete. We really appreciate it.
Take care, Pete.
Good to see you, Pete.
So we actually are down to our last question anyway, but what would you say is your best advice for a young technician just starting out?
Oh, wow. That's tough. I think Pete left on purpose. He read the questions.
Right.
My best advice is, stick with it and don't be afraid to shift and pivot. If you're in a shop or an environment that just doesn't fit, leave. Leave before the frustration gets to you. It's a tough industry, but it's a very rewarding industry if you find yourself in the right situation and the right environment. And unfortunately, there's a lot of pressure with this job. There's a lot of pressure in this industry. And it can get to you. And listen to yourself. Don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to leave. Mental health is number one. And recognize it and listen to it. If you find yourself in an environment that just doesn't work, it is not benefiting you personally, emotionally, and professionally, then leave. Don't be afraid to walk away. There are so many opportunities. There are more opportunities than there are people to fill those opportunities. And so don't allow yourself to be in a bad situation, a bad environment. It is not worth it at all. So that would be my advice.
I would say, as a young technician, or any technician really, you're going to have days, sometimes weeks, when you think every car you touch can't be fixed or you can't fix them. And it'll run in streaks like that. You have to look up, get out of the shop, look around, and see what struggles the industry is having, not just the struggles that you're having in your shop. And you'll come back with a different frame of mind. Things will start working again. You'll start fixing cars again. But don't get into that trap where you go to work in the morning and you walk into the shop and that's your only world, because there's a lot of people out there that are in the same boat and they're willing to talk and willing to help.
My 2 cents is actually informed by reading the nominations of the Best Young Tech Awards. So I was thinking there were common themes that I saw why nominators were excited about the young tech they were nominating. And to me, without looking at them, but from memory, is being humble. Some of these young folks will come out of school thinking, I know it all. No, you don't. So stay humble. A passion for learning. That we talked about learning before, but when you're hungry to learn, your employers and your peers notice, and they respect that. And yeah, you might be coming to the table without, 10, 15, 20 years worth of experience, but when they recognize you're the person in the shop who's going the extra mile to learn that new tool, to learn that new system or process, you stand out and you go far. And similarly, just being helpful. Again, you may not be helpful from an expert standpoint because the folks you're working with are for know it more, but to be of assistance, not instead of standing around looking at your phone waiting for them to tell you to do something. And that's some kind of stuff I see out of the nominations pretty consistently, that when a shop is inspired enough about a young tech who's working for them, those are often the things I see them saying.
Oh. And I think that's all some great advice from the three of you. There's so much that these technicians can hopefully learn from this video. I know I learned a lot. And I just want to thank you all so much for joining me today. And, before we go, I do just want to bring up again that if you or someone you know who is 35 or younger and working in the automotive repair industry and they're just killing it, please nominate them or yourself for our Best Young Tech Awards program. The winner receives more than just bragging rights, right? So you get a trip to Apex. There's a trip to the STX Supplier and Training Expo, some tools and equipment from our sponsors, which, speaking of our sponsors, we want to give a big shout out to them, to Durablast, to TechForce Foundation, CarQuest Technical Institute, WorldPack Training Institute. Without all of them, this awards program wouldn't be possible. So thank you so much. And then once again, the deadline for Best Young Tech submissions is June 2nd. That is going to come up so much faster than you think. So get those submissions in, and you can find that link to apply in the description down below, or by visiting vehicleservicepros.com/2023 Best Young Tech. Bye, everyone.
For having us.